Florence, Italy, 1418. The most ambitious building project in Europe has been stalled for decades. The Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, the Duomo of Florence, has been under construction for over 100 years. The walls are finished, the marble exterior is complete, the interior is breathtaking in scale. And right in the middle of all of it, a hole. 45 meters across, open to the sky. Rain comes in. Pigeons have moved in. The grandest cathedral in Christendom is, essentially, a very expensive shelter with no roof. For 50 years, every great architect and engineer in Europe has tried to solve this problem. They have submitted plans. They have proposed solutions. They have argued, debated, theorized. Every plan has failed, either on paper or, worse, partway through construction when the structural reality became impossible to ignore. The dome they want to build is too wide. The traditional method of construction, build a wooden support structure, lay the bricks on top, let the mortar dry, remove the wood, requires a forest's worth of timber just for the support structure. And even that mountain of wood would probably collapse under the weight of the dome before the mortar could dry. The architects of Europe are stuck. And then a jeweler walks into the competition. Not an architect, not an engineer. A man who spent his career making intricate gold objects and clock mechanisms. Small, precise things you could hold in your hand. His name is Filippo Brunelleschi, and he tells the building committee of Florence that he can build them the largest dome in the history of human construction, without any scaffolding from the ground, without showing them his plans. The committee thinks he is insane. They are wrong. To understand why this was such an extraordinary claim, you need to understand what the Florentines were actually asking for. The dome they wanted was not merely large. It was, by the engineering standards of the time, physically impossible. The span of the octagonal base, 45 meters, roughly 150 feet, was wider than any dome that had ever been successfully built in Europe. Wider than the Pantheon in Rome, which had been constructed 13 centuries earlier and remained the gold standard of dome construction. And here's the compounding problem. The walls of the cathedral had already been built with an inward curve that would normally require a dome to support itself partly from the outside, from external buttresses that would lean against it and hold it in place. But the Florentines didn't want external buttresses. They considered them ugly. They had built the cathedral without provisions for them. So the dome not only had to be enormous, it had to support itself entirely from within. It had to hold its own weight from the inside as it was being constructed for years, while workers added layer after layer of heavy brick to an increasingly precarious curved surface hundreds of feet in the air. No one knew how to do that. Brunelleschi said he did. The building committee is skeptical in the way that committees are skeptical of people who claim to solve problems that experts have failed to solve for 50 years. They ask to see his plans. Brunelleschi refuses. He is pathologically protective of his ideas, not without reason in a city where intellectual theft was common and there was no concept of patents or intellectual property protection. If he showed his plans, someone else would build his dome. He would receive none of the credit and none of the money, so he refuses. The committee demands that he either show them his plans or leave. Brunelleschi does something that has been discussed in every book about him ever since. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out an egg, sets the egg on the marble table in front of the assembled experts and officials of Florence, and challenges every person in the room to make it stand upright. One by one, the architects and commissioners try. The egg wobbles and falls. No one can make it stand. Then Brunelleschi picks it up, holds it over the table, and taps the blunt end firmly against the marble, just enough to crush the shell slightly and flatten the bottom. He sets it down. It stands perfectly. The room erupts. "We could have done that. Anyone could have done that." Brunelleschi smiles. "Exactly. And once I show you how to build the dome, you will say the same thing. So perhaps you should simply trust that I know how and let me build it." He gets the commission. Not enthusiastically. The committee is still deeply uncertain. But they have been stalled for 50 years and they are running out of alternatives. They give the job to the jeweler. What Brunelleschi does over the next 16 years changes the course of architecture and engineering permanently. The first problem he solves is getting materials to the height where they need to be used. The dome rises hundreds of feet above the floor of the cathedral. Getting stone and brick up there using the technology of 1420 is enormously difficult and slow. Brunelleschi invents a solution: the world's first reversible gear hoist. A machine powered by oxen that can raise heavy loads to the top of the dome and then lower the empty platform back down without reversing the entire mechanism. Like the difference between a one-speed bicycle and a bicycle with gears. Before this invention, nothing like it existed. After it, the principle appears in machines throughout the Renaissance. The second problem, the structural problem, the one that had defeated everyone else, he solves with a technique called the herringbone pattern. Traditional bricklaying stacks bricks in horizontal rows, strong but dependent on external support while the mortar dries. Brunelleschi lays his bricks in a diagonal herringbone pattern, interlocking each new row with the ones below it, in a way that means each newly placed brick is held in position by the bricks already laid, without needing any external framework to support it while the mortar sets. The dome builds itself as it rises. Each new ring of bricks is locked into the previous ring. The structure becomes stronger as it gets larger. And then the third insight. He doesn't build one dome. He builds two. An outer shell, lighter, designed to deal with weather and to present the visual profile the Florentines want. And an inner shell, thicker, structural, load-bearing. Between them, a hidden network of stone chains and wooden rings that hold the two shells together and distribute the enormous weight of the structure around the octagonal drum. No one had ever thought to build a dome this way. No one has ever needed to since. In 1436, the final brick is laid. Florence looks up. The dome of Santa Maria del Fiore rises above the terracotta rooftops of the city. Dark terracotta brick on the outside, the lantern at the top catching the Tuscan light, visible from miles in every direction. It remains to this day the largest brick dome ever built by human hands, larger than anything built in the 600 years since Brunelleschi finished it. The architects who built St. Paul's Cathedral in London came to Florence first to study Brunelleschi's methods. The architects of St. Peter's in Rome did the same. The dome of the United States Capitol building is built on principles derived from Brunelleschi's work. A goldsmith from Florence invented the method that defines domes for the next 600 years. I think about the egg constantly. Not because it's a clever story, because of what it reveals about how expertise and authority interact. The committee had all the credentials. They had the architects, the engineers, the experts in construction and mathematics and structural theory. They had 50 years of serious attempts by serious people. And they were stuck. Brunelleschi had none of those credentials. He had something different. A mind that approached the problem from a completely different angle, without the accumulated assumptions of 50 years of failed attempts. He didn't know the dome was impossible in the way that the experts knew it was impossible. So he solved it. The greatest obstacle to building the dome wasn't the engineering. It was knowing, with great authority and many good reasons, that it couldn't be done. Hit like if Brunelleschi earned it. subscribe. 3 days. See you then.